Well, welcome to the March meeting of the Champaign County League of Women Voters. Our meetings in March and April traditionally have been given over to reports from our observers so that all of us can be informed about the activities of local government, certainly those that are taxing bodies, and all of them are, as a way of informing ourselves about what is going on, as well as maybe what's not going on, or maybe not going on so well, who knows. By way of just a general introduction to this topic of observer reports, I want to say that observing local units of government is one of the pillars of the League of Women Voters activities. For all of its history, the League has certainly been concerned with transparency in local government, as well as education about local government, because this is really the level of government where all of us can have a very direct impact on how well local government works for us. And I think that's part of the reason why we here in Champaign County do devote 2 meetings of our calendar year to this very topic, so that we can give adequate time to the very thoughtful observations that are made by our League members, and the time that they put into constructing their reports so that they are meaningful to all of us, not only here in this room, but those who will see this on local television, and as a way of establishing some benchmarks in terms of what kind of progress is being made, where some difficulties may arise, and what we as citizens perhaps can do to rectify the situation. So I'm going to turn this podium over to Betty Siegel. Betty has been a long time member of the League of Women Voters and has devoted a lot of time to organizing our corps of volunteers and setting up these 2 meetings so that, again, there's a logic, there's an order, there's a methodology to the presentations that you'll hear both this month and next month. Note that our meeting next month, which I believe is April 21st, will be again here at Clark Lindsay, but we will not be in this room. For scheduling reasons, we will be meeting up on the main floor in a meeting room across from the library. Okay? So we'll make a note of that in the voter that you receive next month, and we hope to see you all there, as well as those who will be giving their reports then. So, Betty.
Thank you, Barb. I have to welcome today Mary Blair, who was the former organizer of the Observer Corps, and thank her for her good foundation that has supported me in my 2 years as doing this, because despite what our president just said, I have not been that much work into this because I have not had the time or energy, and I apologize to all the observers that I haven't supported you well enough. Today I'm going to go, we're trying to get some sort of organization, but we have a number of reasons that it doesn't maybe flow as well as you'd like. We're going to start, though, with 2 reports from Urbana. First, Grace Scholl will give us a summary of Herb's observations with the Urbana Board of Education, and then following that we will have a report from a very new member of the League who has picked up from Mary Blair, who observed the Urbana City Council for many years, and Barbara Schleicher will report on the Urbana City Council from just several months of observing that, and we're very appreciative that somebody came in and hit the ground running with that. So first, here is the Urbana Board of Education.
How long? What time?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Perhaps the most controversial topic for the board this year was whether to rename Prairie School to Dr. Preston L. Williams Jr. Elementary School. The board policy states that naming a facility should only be done after at least 3 years have elapsed since the service to the district or the death of an honoree. This was not the case in this instance. Former Superintendent Dr. Williams had retired less than 2 years ago. Many in the local African American community felt it important to rename the school in Dr. Williams' honor because he was such a role model for the community and was the first African American to serve the district as superintendent. Opposition to the proposal, including concern about losing the Prairie name, about whether this was the best way to honor Dr. Williams, and whether it was just too soon, as the board policy indicated. In the end, the vote was 4-3 to rename the school for Dr. Williams, but to name the campus which holds the elementary school and the Urbana Early Childhood School the Prairie campus. Superintendent Don Owen is working on a revision of the board naming policies. Many renovation and upgrade projects are planned for the next several years using the 1-cent sales tax money for funding. The projects were identified in June of 2014 and dates assigned to each. The first project will be central air conditioning at the Dr. Williams School, to be completed this summer. The second is the high school kitchen and serving area, which will begin this summer and be completed in 2016. The third is reconfiguring the drop-off area at Thomas Paine to separate bus and car traffic. This should be completed in 2015. Next is an over $7 million improvement project at Yankee Ridge School, including new roof, new kitchen, new multi-purpose room, central air conditioning, replacement of leaky windows, and construction of 3 new fine arts classrooms. The projects at Wiley to update the kitchen, add to the gym, build fine arts classroom, convert the student drop-off area into a loop with a new entrance and lobby, and at Thomas Paine to build a new gym and stage, excuse me, update the kitchen and multipurpose room, add fine arts classrooms, will both come after the Yankee Ridge project is completed. All in all, these projects will cost over $27 million. No report on a public school district in our community would be complete without some mention of the funding crisis facing the board. But what can be said? The current way schools are funded in our state leaves poor communities such as Urbana struggling. State Senator Andy Manar has tried to get new, more equitable funding formula enacted, but to no avail. His bill has been reintroduced in the 2015 session, but no date for hearing arguments has been set. Although I read in this morning's paper that Speaker Madigan and the Republican leader Durkin have jointly formed a 23-member committee to study the issues and make recommendations. The Manar bill, let's see, at the October 7th meeting, the superintendent of the Pana Community Schools and the Pana School Board secretary came and spoke to our board on their work to get better school funding passed in the legislature. The state is perpetually behind in promised payments as well. Deficit spending seems to have become the norm for our district. This year we have a $950,000 deficit in the education fund. Expenses for the district continue to rise, this year about 6%, but the state funding stays the same. Special grants are a mixed blessing. The staff develop the grants and dream up ways to qualify for the grants, while the money is sorely needed for everyday expenses but cannot be used for those needs. Each year, a number of staff receive reduction in force notices, RIF, because their positions are based on special grant funds, mostly from the state. Because the district does not learn the status of various grant requests until late summer, the employees must be notified in the spring that their employment will not continue. Last year, in the spring of 2014, the district sent the lowest number in many years, only 20. Joe Wiemelt, director of the district's dual language program, reported last spring that he has had more Spanish language teacher applicants from the United States, so he may not need to hire from Spain as in the past. If foreign teachers need to be hired, he can do the interviews via Skype. The board granted 3.1% raises to all district non-union employees and administrators beginning last July 1st. This affects about 100 individuals. This raise matched the raise negotiated by the UEA as part of their 3-year contract. The contract expires at the end of the spring semester this year, and I hope a new agreement can be reached without difficulty. The News-Gazette ran an article in December on the comparative wages earned by school superintendents in the area. This article showed Urbana's superintendent, Don Owen, as the second highest paid in the area. Board President John Dimmick quickly responded to the article with a letter to the editor, pointing out that Dr. Owen is the only superintendent of those listed who pays 100% of his own pension, annuities, and life insurance benefits. Other superintendents receive those benefits in addition to their salary. Dr. Owen also uses his own vehicle without reimbursement for all his school district travel. The district was asked by the city to participate in an enterprise zone. The school district would offer property tax abatements for 5 to 10 years on projects that provide increased valuation in the new zone, which is 8.5 square miles on the northeast and southeast sides of Urbana. An enterprise zone is an area designated by a government body to stimulate economic growth and neighborhood revitalization. The enterprise zone proposal was approved in November with 1 vote against the issue. The new park, that is Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, tests were given to students in Urbana last week. Urbana had been a part of pilot testing for the park a year ago in 2014, so the new test was not expected to have difficulties in its first official year. This test is designed to test students' content knowledge of English language, arts, and math in alignment with Common Core standards. The test should show where schools stand comparatively on grade level knowledge and also show if students are where they should be for becoming college or career ready. We'll have to wait until the fall to get the results. Urbana High School held its first outdoor graduation in June with great success. Because the University State Farm Center, where graduation was previously held, is closed for renovation, this seemed the best solution. Outdoor graduation at the high school football field is planned for this spring as well. The district tried a new project in mid-July called Walk as One in an effort to keep the community informed about the school district, community resources, and other helpful information. Volunteers from the Sheriff's Department, school board members, district staff, PTA members, and the City Council knocked on doors in East Urbana, giving residents bags packed with flyers about school registration, United Way resources, and home safety. About 70 volunteers took part.
Thank you, Grace. Now, Barbara Schleicher will talk to us about the Urbana City Council, and as I said before, she has only been observing this a few months, and she's a new league member. So let's welcome both her report and Barbara as a league member.
Well, thank you very
She has 10 minutes.
I won't be using that all. Actually, I've only been observing since March 2nd, and I will not have a narrative like you had. I'm not sure exactly what I was supposed to disseminate for you, but I'll go through my minutes, or my notes that I took for these meetings. The first one I went to was the March 2nd City Council meeting. I actually misunderstood when the time was, so I was about 20 minutes late, but I got in for the petition and communications portion of their agenda. Citizens and residents of the edge of the mall apartments, which I believe caters to seniors and folks with disabilities. So I have a lot to learn. We're talking about smoke-free housing, and they were working with the Champaign County Public Health Administration or Department with regards to having the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development designate buildings that are funded by HUD to be smoke-free. Apparently there are people in the complex that are crazy smokers that have caused health problems for a lot of the people who live in the complex. There was also citizens who were talking about the mental health court that was being proposed. It would be a very similar court as the drug court for people who are in nonviolent crimes, would be assessed and then receive some type of treatment. Whether they would be then incarcerated or just be observed is what the court would determine. Several of the folks who did comment on this felt it was a drop in the bucket, quote unquote, compared to the number of cases that were involved with mental health issues and related crimes. Others felt that jailing was not the way to go for these people, that the one, jails were overcrowded, two, perhaps incarcerating these individuals was not the answer if they had mental health issues, that some sort of assessment and treatment was needed. There was a woman who did a rather lengthy presentation on the Snow Angel program, where neighbors help neighbors when there's a snow event like we had maybe 3 weeks ago, excuse me, to help clear the sidewalks, whether the individual has a problem actually clearing the sidewalk, or there's an absentee landlord that is not clearing the sidewalk, but it's a route that's needed for the children to get to school. All the schools are really trying to encourage children to walk to school to get some exercises. I live right across from Leal School, and I'd like to see less cars out there if possible, and more of the students working, but that's an editorial comment here. Programs like this have been very successful in similar sized cities, Davenport, Iowa, Columbia, Missouri, Ann Arbor, Michigan was a little bit larger than Champaign-Urbana, and Lincoln, Nebraska. Notice all of these are university-related towns that she was promoting. She also showed an incredible amount of photos of people walking in the street, especially after the last snow event that we had. There was also a presentation at this time for the Boneyard Creek Improvement Project Area Renaming Survey that was done on the city's website. And the name that was selected was the Boneyard Creek Riverwalk. A lot of the city council members and people who then talked about this did not feel that was a good name because it's not a river. It's a creek, and its original name was actually Silver Creek, which, you know, that restaurant is right. But and that was the name that the Potawatomi Indians apparently used when they were in this area. But then we got to the actual passing of ordinances and resolutions, and I just jotted these down, what was passed. I'll learn about major issues in the future. There was a vacation of an alley south of Hill Street and Romaine Street and Matthews Avenue. That all of these ordinances that I'll be telling you about were passed unanimously. Another ordinance authorizing the sale of real estate at 908 East Oregon. Another ordinance amending the Urbana City Code regarding a schedule of fees for live scan fingerprinting. A resolution supporting the establishment of the mental health court. A resolution regarding incarceration and incarceration alternatives in Champaign County. Again, all of these were passed. And then finally, in their new business for that day, there was a resolution passed regarding the protest against a proposed tax amendment to the Champaign County zoning ordinance concerning heliports and restricted landing areas. Okay, moving along. I had a sick dog on the day of the committee of the whole. However, you can watch television and watch the whole thing. So I was a little late on that, but I did get in a lot of the conversation, and I think an issue that a redevelopment agreement with the H.G. Dwell LLC on a repurposing of the New Life Church at 202 Illinois Street through a TIF agreement. And I can't remember what that exactly stands for, but I know that in this case, it'll be a 65% tax rebate for the development group. They will be repurposing or reusing the church for a mixed-use purposes of office, residential, and restaurant. It will be called the Abbey. And the concerns that the City Council had expressed were, what about parking? If you know that site at all, there's some parking behind the building, not a lot of parking for what they're talking about, but parking was also suggested for down the block at the parking deck and across the street in the already crowded Lincoln Village or Lincoln Mall shopping parking lot area. Other questions were, what if the business goes under? And that's all addressed in the agreement as far as if they use the term, if the business goes dark, that this would be spelled out. It's a rebate, so they would not get their tax rebate until they've actually paid their taxes. And so if there is a concern with regards to the success of the business or it lasting, that would be addressed. And then when would the redevelopment begin? They want to start immediately, and I'll tell you that the ordinance was passed last night so that they have all of their papers for inspection because it is an existing property and and they have their architect's designs, so they need to all have that reviewed, and they want to start ASAP. They also talked about at the committee of the whole meeting about the M-Core project, and that's the improvements to Green Street from the Urbana side of it, from Wright Street to Ray Street. It's a project that's apparently cooperation with the City of Champaign, the University of Illinois, the State of Illinois, Department of Transportation, who's providing a matching grant for this. It's a $9 million project. Urbana's portion is $2.1 million. And it would improve the street. As if you've been down Green Street lately, it's like it's been bombed out. It's got a lot of potholes, etc. A lot of the street is actually failing due to some of the underlying structure of the street is falling apart. And also streetscape. And streetscape, if you're not familiar with that term, is fixing the curbs, benches, shelters, things like that. Then there was also a discussion about digital billboards, and the company representative from Adams Outdoor actually talked about what they would be doing. They would be converting the existing billboards and probably using 2-for-1 to develop these billboards. If you're familiar with these kind of billboards, I've recently seen a lot of them in Champaign. They want to encourage local businesses to use this. They did have some folks come in to testify how wonderful this would be. Let me go quickly. I have probably less than a minute to tell you last night about the ordinances that were passed. The redevelopment agreement with the Abbey, the repurposing of the New Life Church passed. With that, they had to revise the annual budget from last year in order to develop that agreement. The core project for the street improvements were approved, and the budget was amended. They also approved of some fiber optics to be put into the right-of-way. There was a new liquor license passed, and there was much discussion about a change in the zoning ordinance was then referred to the committee of the whole. Sorry, I took 30 seconds too long. I'll learn, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Enjoyed that. I'm going to make a slight switch in the order that I announced to the observers in order to keep some sort of structure. We're going to move now from the Urbana boards to the Champaign boards, and the first of those is the Champaign City Council, which Holly Wilper will be able to talk to us about. Sorry, Heidi. 10 minutes.
I've been doing this for 10 years, but I didn't try to get all 10 years in here. So. Just keep making me do it again.
She only had two board.
So we start with the boilerplate. So the Champaign City Council, with the mayor serving as the first among equals, is the primary governing body for the city of Champaign. Current members are Mayor Gerard, Deborah Finan, Karen Foster, William Kiles, Michael Ledoux, Tom Bruno, Marcy Dodds, Paul Ferracci, and Vic McIntosh. The upcoming election will almost certainly change that, as several of the members are running for re-election or alternatively running for the mayoral position. The City Council meets every Tuesday evening from 7 until the agenda is complete, which ranges from 7:20 to 11 p.m. They have regular voting sessions and also special study sessions, sometimes on separate evenings and sometimes just mixed together. Information about their proceedings is very available to the public. The agendas are available prior to the meetings. Minutes of all meetings, including study sessions, are available online. All formal meetings are recorded and rebroadcast on public access, as well as being available for download through the city website. All the reports to council that are part of study sessions are also published on the web and available to order if you'd rather get it in your email or even in your mailbox. This year, the City Council approved creating a council policy on disclosure to codify their rules about transparency. There was an issue in 2013 where the public was not aware of who was behind a land trust, and there was no way to verify whether or not council members had conflict issues. So they will be making a policy on that, and in general, it's really good to see any move towards more government transparency. The Champaign City Council also serves as the board for the city of Champaign Township, so I like to always have a little bit about the township at this meeting. This year, probably the biggest news is that the Newcomb Township is merging its general assistance with ours. General assistance is the funds that go to support low-income families and individuals. Newcomb is generally located between I-74 and 136, just north of Mahomet. And the reason that this is a good trade-off is that Newcomb doesn't have many cases. So this means that they don't have to have their own program to support just a few cases, and we get the benefit of getting the extra funding from what cases they do have. The council approved many major building developments this year. Early in the year, they approved an infill development incentives for the former Circuit City location, which is now a Gander Mountain. And in studying this, I learned a great deal about the incentive program. So I thought I would tell you. So incentive funding is created, as my compadre said, by reimbursing from city revenue generated by the new usage. According to the ordinances, to qualify for consideration, the property must be in a strategic location, must contain more than 1.5 acres, there must be someone interested in pursuing that property, and the property must be actively losing value. In addition, the purchase or renovation must be commercial, or at least not primarily residential or industrial, must involve demolition and rebuild or a substantial amount of improvements, like $500,000 worth of improvements, substantial aesthetic improvement, and must create new or increased city revenues, and it will not happen without the city involvement. So hopefully that balances out the needs to improve the area and support business with the needs to actually make sure that we're at least revenue positive. In addition to that, on the development front in February, there was a new tax increment redevelopment plan for the North Mattis redevelopment project and the final plan for the campus center. That's the building that's going in on the old parking lot J at 6th and Green, rather. In March, there was approval to Kraft for their new warehouse. In April, they voted to approve a development agreement with Volition for assistance in redesigning Volition's space. And in May, they signed off on the final plan for the Bristol Place LEED master plan, as well as approving the Latitude buildings on University. So I felt like I was going through my notes and looking at it, and every month it's like, oh, there's another new development thing, there's another new development thing. So we should be seeing cranes in the skyline for quite some time to come. Council looked into changing the codes regarding alarm system ordinances, which were created back in 1989. In 2012, which at the time of the report to council was the most recent year they had numbers for, there were 2,555 alarm calls, and of these, only 19 were actually due to criminal activities. So the vast majority of the calls coming in are false alarms, which causes multiple problems. Not only is that costly for the police system, but it also, there's the fear that the police will become complacent, because most likely if they get an alarm, it's a false alarm, but they have to respond and continue to respond as if it was a real situation. Currently, the city brings in about $12,000 per year in false alarm fees, but spends over 10 times that on outcalls and maintaining their database of calls. The changes to the ordinance require users to be knowledgeable and responsible for the alarm systems on their property. They require do-it-yourself systems to have the same rules and standards, and require monitoring companies to try 2 calls to the owner before calling the police instead of 1. This 2-call policy does not apply to panic calls, hold-up calls, 911 calls, or calls from businesses that sell firearms. In other jurisdictions, this last requirement led to a 35 to 60% reduction in false alarms. The ordinance also calls for doubling the false alarm fees and reducing the number of free false alarms you get from 6 to 3. Video gambling was approved by the state of Illinois, but the State Gaming Commission requires that businesses with video gaming machines must have liquor licenses. This led to many additional requests for liquor licenses, which are limited within our community. The council did not feel that it was council's place to circumvent the intent of the Gaming Commission, so staff brought forward a proposal to create a new kind of liquor license in Champaign, shaped to address the specific requirements of the video gambling legislation. With video gaming, 30% of the net proceeds from the machines goes to the state, and 5% of that is rebated to the cities. In 2013, the city of Champaign made approximately $144,000 from video gaming. The new license has some specific limits. Only beer and wine can be sold on the new liquor license. It's limited only to the part of the store where the games are located, which must be physically separated from the rest of the store with a barrier, and limited to alcohol for sale only in that part of the store. The Champaign-Urbana, and actually you touched on this point too, the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District's Multimodal Corridor Enhancement Project received a Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery Grant, or TIGER grant, in the amount of $15.7 million. This grant from the Federal Highway Administration will need to be supported by the City of Champaign, the City of Urbana, and the University of Illinois, and matched by city funds. It's planned to improve large sections of city street infrastructure, primarily in and around Campus Town. Design is to be complete in 2016, with all the work to be completed by 2021. Improvements will be on segments of Green, White, and Armory between Neal and Lincoln. I always try to come up with little snippets of things that all go together, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. After years of planning on the part of both city and neighborhood groups, the council signed the authorization to begin work on the West Washington Drainage Improvement Plan. The stormwater utility fee, voted in contentiously a few years back, is providing the funding for several watershed projects that seem to be already helping out when Champaign has major rain events. The city entered into a franchise arrangement with ITV3 for the build-out of fiber from the UC2B program across the community. ITV3 plans to communicate and educate the community about their service and provide a web service where community members can express an interest. They will bring fiber to any portion of the community when 50% of the population in that area expresses interest, or whenever 15 people within 1,200 feet request service. Unlike other providers in our area, ITV3 expressed no concern whatsoever about keeping a local office, as that's their normal mode of operation. So we've had that discussion with other providers before. They didn't want to have to staff locally. The Garden Hills area has been a major concern for the City Council since 1995, with renewed efforts since 2007. Over the past few years, there have been major efforts to improve infrastructure, community relations, and provide community opportunities. This year, Council made the decision to put extra effort into property improvements. Additional focus will be placed on property maintenance and things the city can do to educate and enable the community to fix issues. They've met with homeowners and landlords in the area and are trying to contact individuals with vacant properties. I think it's great to see the continuing effort going into the area rather than just a quick bandage attempt when there's a problem and then moving on to something else. And that is my report.
Oh, thank you so much, Holly. And now we're going to go to a second Champaign board, which Trish Crowley will tell us about the Champaign Planning Commission, which sort of follows with what Holly just talked about. It seemed to me like the Champaign City Council's been doing a lot of planning, and now we're going to hear how the larger commission that's dedicated to planning is doing. Thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
10 minutes. Do you usually get
5
10?
minutes.
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, the City of Champaign Plan Commission is a 9-member body, and it's scheduled to meet 2 times a month. There have been quite a few cancellations in this last year because economic activity, which is the kind of activity building and developing that drives Plan Commission issues, has been greatly reduced in the recent recession. There have been the construction that's been occurring, particularly in Campus Town, is by and large been within the planning and zoning requirements of the districts, and so hasn't required a whole lot of council and plan commission activity in order for it to proceed. The Plan Commission reviews most major proposed land decisions and then makes recommendations to the council. So it doesn't make decisions itself, but it does provide a forum for all these issues to be reviewed in great detail before they get to a city council meeting, which may be filled up with a lot of other issues in addition to these plan and land issues. The kind of cases reviewed by the Plan Commission are set out by state law. They include annexation agreements, new and revised subdivisions, rezoning, and ordinance and zoning ordinance amendments. Land use decisions that are handled by other boards include zoning variances, which are handled by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and historic preservation, which are handled by the Historic Preservation Commission. The current members of this 9-member board are extremely experienced, and due to the presence of the U of I, contain experts in land use who teach on the topic of U of I. So this Plan Commission is very knowledgeable about Plan Commission law and local development. It also includes local businessmen, lawyers, and other citizens, and the attendance is usually high. The level of activities varies with the economic climate, and the more active the development community is, the more cases there will be. Although the last years have been quiet, the activity is definitely picking up. I'm going to highlight 2 cases that can show the impact of the Plan Commission, bearing in mind that the final decision is always made by the City Council. The first was a zoning ordinance amendment modifying the definition of restaurant to eliminate the requirement that the food must be sold for money in order to be defined as a restaurant. And essentially, this change permitted the daily soup kitchen to locate in any building where restaurants would be permitted. And prior to that, it was limited to buildings where churches and charitable organizations were permitted because it was an auxiliary use to a church. It was a charitable activity. And although the zoning ordinance amendment didn't, of course, specifically name the daily soup kitchen, it was pretty clear, it was clear to everyone that this was the issue because the daily soup kitchen had long desired to move to a site that was more functional for its purposes. The neighbors to the proposed new location on First Street were very much against this proposal, and they appeared at the Plan Commission in large numbers, but the change was recommended by the Plan Commission, ultimately approved by the City Council. A second issue was a zoning change that reduced minimum parking requirements for multifamily units from 1 space per bedroom to 0.5 spaces per bedroom. And this was kind of in accordance with a lot of the philosophy of the City Council, which is kind of heading towards the free market aspect of parking. You know, parking has to be paid one way or another, and if as a matter of using your building, you need to provide parking for customers, then you should do that and not make it a governmental requirement. This change had a particularly dramatic effect on campus, where it's been where 4-bedroom apartments had previously been the major construction, and a lot of the new buildings that you see going up are 1- and 2-bedroom buildings. A different style or desire by students, which with this change permits it because the land cost is the major driving factor in the campus area. So with the less development activity, staff has had a time to address broader questions. They've passed a Walk Champaign plan, which identified 80 pedestrian infrastructure improvement projects across the community to improve pedestrian access. So attendance tends to be limited to the people who are directly involved, but some issues bring out lots and lots of people, and the Plan Commission encourages any member of the public to basically say as much as they want on an issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Trish. So now we're going to segue over to from Champaign City over to the larger area, but stay on planning, and we'll have Nancy Morse. Did you get here? Nancy Morse will report on the Regional Planning Commission. So Nancy, you have 5 minutes.
Which should be possible because last year was the first year that the Regional Planning Commission stopped meeting monthly and meets every other month. Their meetings are twice as long, however, so it doesn't much matter. The Champaign Regional Planning Commission is made up of the people who belong because of something else. So there are representatives from the Urbana mayor, representative from Urbana, a couple representatives from Champaign, from the county board, and as the outlying areas have grown, now from Savoy, from Mahomet, from Rantoul, and from St. Joe. So that it changes. And automatically the chair of the county board is a member, and so that has changed. And now instead of Al Kurtz, it's Patsy Petrie, but she was already a member, so there's not much change. The Regional Plan Commission is chaired by, or is run by their CEO, Cameron Moore, who's been there now long enough that he probably just doesn't get compared to the people who were there before him. He runs a very efficient meeting. There's a recording secretary who seems to hold the whole thing together with voluminous minutes and paperwork. The staff, which is remarkable, they really are. Elizabeth Murphy is the finance chair, and she manages an office that has a budget of about $20 million, mostly from grants from different agencies on different timetables with different requirements. And it all seems to get done, and so that it makes sense to everyone. There is also the Director of Human Relations. The Planning and Community Development Director is Rita Black, who is a terrific planner in transportation areas. Is responsible for all of the CUATS plans. There's a new long-range plan for transportation that was approved in 2014. That happens every 5 years. And they go to quite a bit of effort to get community input. Right. Head Start is one of the organizations under the Regional Plan Commission. Kathleen Liffick is the head of that. Their last federal review, and for anyone who's familiar with Head Start, a federal review is stringent and very complete. And everyone works very hard. It involves, obviously, academics, social, governance, what they do for health, what they do for nutrition, how they involve parents. Anyhow, their last review this past summer was very successful with no compliance issues. And because of that, they have a 5-year window project time, they call, before they have their next review. So that makes everyone happy. The Social Services Agency Regional Plan Commission does what something called an Economic Opportunity Commission does in other places. And one of their programs are housing assistance in the form of LIHEAP, which is energy assistance in both summer and winter. And one of the changes there was that the Regional Plan Commission now does most of the contracting work involved with rehabilitation. They always get questions about, are you working on sustainability as well as are you patching things? And so they're used to thinking about that. It's an interesting group. They meet at 8:30 in the morning. That's changed. They used to meet at 8. And they must not have to go someplace as quickly as other people because they can go on and on. There's a they have a communications director, and he sees that the meetings are taped and are on the local access television. So.
So we have gone through 2 cities and now a regional thing. So we'll continue with our final, more formal report, going back to education, but staying at a regional level. And so for that, Dorothea Smith is going to report on her observations of the Parkland College Board.
Well, I thought I'd start with students. 5 minutes, yes. Okay, as the economy improves, then the demographics of the students changes. Right now, the economy's pretty good. The average age right now is 24.3, and most of these students come directly from high school to Parkland. Now, there is a very active Veterans Administration program. A lot of the veterans don't understand exactly how they can get help, so that is a large part of this program. But they would take the average age up, because the average age right now is 24.3. And there's about 40% of these students have some sort of an ethnic connection. In short, the student population is getting more diverse and younger. It was interesting in that the faculty expectations of academic success were a bit higher than the students' performance. There are a lot of programs that have to do with marketing and recruiting. They have an ESL coffee and conversation group, which the students seem to really enjoy. It doesn't even have to be, you can speak any language you like. Also, students can make their own videos and have them complete with subtitles. Another thing that they discuss quite a bit about, often the Parkland teachers will come up with kind of a condensed version of what they had taught that day. And this is on YouTube. So if a student does miss something, well, they can get a general idea. It won't be the whole lecture, but they can get a general idea of what went on. Also, in terms of recruiting and marketing, they have a new science lab, and of course the second largest planetarium in Illinois. The labs are well equipped. For example, there were 30 compound microscopes bought for $30,870. Lots of computers, 260 Dells at about $1,000 each. Now, however, let's talk about tuition. It was raised starting in fall of 2014. It went to $116 per semester hours, which would be about a $7 raise. Out of district, it went from $285 to $303, $18 difference. Out of state and international went up to $463, which is $28, quite a raise there. In terms of the internet, I was wondering about that. In district, it's $167. Now, I don't know if they have to pay any fees on that or not. For regular tuition, you often get some good-sized fees there from the different colleges. But anyway, in-state, it's $167. Out-of-state and international get a big break here. It's only $255 as opposed to $463 for a regular classroom. There's also been a brief discussion of offering a baccalaureate degree for community colleges. A number of the people who are involved are preparing a white paper, and then they'll present this to the community college councils and see what they think about offering a four-year program. Oh, also, daycare fees have risen for the students, but there are a number of different categories. Maybe they only need a babysitter for a few hours, and that's fine, or a half a day or a full day, whatever. But they are very flexible. Ooh, I only have a minute. Okay, in terms of buildings, just about everything's done. The black box is ready to go. Donna Gertz Gallery is ready to go. About the only real discussion about this was in the Student Services building. The third floor was originally to handle storage, physical equipment, and until needed. However, it now houses President Ramage's office, a boardroom, and a lot of computers. Donna Gertz objected to moving the president's office to this fairly isolated third floor room because she said the office should be more available to students and the public. However, the board voted to make the change. In terms of the trustees, you'll be reading a lot about them. There's a lot of interest in this because 16 people applied for Tom Bennett's position. Of course, he's now a state rep. And then the board narrowed it down to 6. And as you know, I have to find it here. Bianca Truitt Green was the one selected. Okay, it's an interesting group. Bye now.
Thank you, Dorothea. So that's the last of our formal presentations, but I wanted to report on several things. Cheryl Kennedy, a couple of years ago, began observing a couple of township boards, and she reported to us last year about that. And she wanted me to explain to you why she doesn't have a formal report for that this year. Are you here, Cheryl? Are you here? She took on a job with her church doing long-range planning last year, and that sort of interfered with her going to the Hensley Township. So she emailed the clerk of the Hensley Township and said that she wouldn't be able to attend because she had a conflict, but she'd like to keep abreast of what they were doing. And so she asked them, could they send her their meeting minutes? And she has heard nothing back. And she said she thought that she said she had always shared with them what her role was as an observer. She said, but they didn't seem to have the same regard for the League that other government units do. Then the other board that she was observing was the Mahomet Township meetings. And then she had death in the family, illness and death of her father that went along, and she wasn't able to start observing that last year until August. I'm just running on. Because this is the roundup. So she has started back in August, and she doesn't think there's been much out of the ordinary report. But she thought that, and she made a useful suggestion that the League may want to take up, that we encourage the townships to have a website in which their minutes could be reported and where they might very well have a better contact with their constituency, which they're like the lowest level of contact with voters, and they really should be having more, and they want to have that, but then they don't seem to know how to do this. There seems to be a government, a local, she says she thinks there's that local government units that they might be able to get some support from the county, from the county level offices in setting up a website, and that this is something that we might recommend. So we may want to recommend that. So that is what's going on with there, but next year she hopes to have a better report on that. Then I just would like to point out that we are missing a number of boards that have been observed in the past. We have the Champaign Board of Education for Unit 4 is not being observed, and I have no observer for that. If any of you would like to observe it, it is open for observing. 2 park boards, Champaign Park Board, the Urbana Park Board, still Mary Blair begged for observers and did not get them, and we've lost an observer there. So these are things that we need to have, really somebody in the League younger than I needs to step up and observe. Then we are, on recommendations of the current and past observers of the 2 historic preservation commissions, we are dropping any observation of those boards. They do not meet even as much as scheduled. The Ann Einhorn, who was observing, which board? The Champaign Preservation Commission, said that at one of the last meetings they had neither a president nor vice president. They were not meeting the required number of times. They didn't have any business coming before them because probably we haven't had much development. So those boards are not being observed, and we're recommending they not be observed unless things pick up a bit. Thank you for listening. Yes?
I have a suggestion. I always have ideas for other people. I think that Cheryl Kennedy's idea is very good about a recommendation from the League.
Would you like to come and speak louder?
Yeah, I'll speak louder. I think Cheryl's idea is a very good idea. I think that in order for that to happen, that because she knows about it, I would recommend that we ask Cheryl to write up a recommendation that goes to the board and then ask the board to act on it.
Very good. Thank you. That's the end of my program.